of the academics, or those are the jobs, I guess the academics. I have my counseling psychology degree from Santa Clara University. I have a theology degree from Fuller Theological Seminary. And I have worked in ministry off and on, paid, unpaid, for about 30 years, here and there. And so I, definitely have a passion for mental health, our spirituality, and the combination of theology with psychology. So those are two of the things I'm most passionate about. That's me, my work. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Like I said before, I guess my name's Antony. I have lived in the Bay Area since about 2000, and I'm a software engineer. I came out here to work in the software industry, and we'll talk a little bit later, I think, in the talk a little bit about sort of our journey, how we met, and the journey of our marriage and stuff like that. So,
you want to talk about our family?
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, and we have 3 kids. We have our 2 oldest, Allison and Abby, and then our youngest, Adam. And they're a junior in high school, a freshman in high school, and a middle schooler. And then we have 3 cats and 1 dog. And a family of squirrels now.
As you mentioned.
Yeah.
All right, I'll have you come up again in a minute. But a little bit about me personally. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the anybody from Michigan originally? No. Okay. So if you're ever from Michigan, or if you ever meet somebody from Michigan, they're going to go, where in Michigan? All right, because Michigan is kind of shaped like a hand. However, there's another peninsula. Michigan's 2 peninsulas, and I'm actually from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, from way up near Canada, basically, by the Keweenaw Peninsula. It's a town of like 200 people, so nobody's ever heard of it, right? But it's called Michigami, Michigan. Literally, I brought Antony back, and the sign got engaged. And the population sign said 199. And
I was like, you subtracted 1 when you left?
From me, right? I left. So, but tiny town, right? I came out here when I was 19 years old. I came out to California, and I've been here since, and that's a long time ago. But I basically, from a small town in the middle of nowhere in middle America, you get married by the time you're like 19. Right? Like, I don't know if any of you are from small towns in the middle of nowhere America, but like, you're pretty much married by the time you're 18 or 19, 20 years old. Like, that's what I thought when I was in high school. I thought you only go to college to get your MRS degree, right? And so I literally expected to be married by the time I was 20. Both my siblings were. I thought that I would be. So by the time I was at least 10 years post high school and not married yet, my family had given up on me. I was like this old maid, right? It was, something that was on my heart for a long time, even all the way through high school, to try to find the one, right? And so I literally spent years trying to find who I would marry. I gotta tell you though, truth be told, I didn't even know, when I moved out to California, I didn't even know who I was though. And so I'm very glad that I didn't get married at 18 years old, in part because the guy I was dating in Michigan at 18 years old, the reason I fled off to California was because he cheated on me with one of my closest friends. And he raised his hand in confronting him. He raised his hand and was gonna hit me, and would have if my mom hadn't pulled up at that split second. So who I was going to marry at that time was a horrible choice. Horrible choice. Horrible choice. Now, a lot of that had to do with who I was at that time, right? Because who I was at that time was a very broken person. If you've done, I don't know, most of you don't come to this church, but if you've heard any of my talks, I give a lot of talks about my life experiences, the fact that I had been abused in different ways as a kid, neglected in different ways as a kid, horrible upbringing, right? And a lot of that shaped me to be a very insecure person. No self-worth, no value, which is how I ended up in an abusive relationship. Now, this is going to age me. Have any of you seen the movie, Julia Roberts, I love Julia Roberts. Have any of you seen the movie Runaway Bride? Oh, some of you have, yay! Okay, so I thought nobody would. Anyways, in the movie, Julia Roberts plays this character called Maggie. And Maggie, for those of you who've never seen this movie, Maggie is a classic, what I call codependent, but I know that now. I didn't know that when I first saw the movie. But a classic person who shapes and molds their interests based on who they're dating, right? And who they're dating, like the classic scene in this movie was she's having breakfast, and she always orders the exact same kind of eggs that whoever she's dating orders. And she never ever figures out what kind of eggs she likes on her own. Right? And that's this one moment where it dawns on her, like she literally runs away from the stage or whatever, the altar getting married, because she doesn't know who she is. She's only conformed herself to what she thought the guy wanted in that relationship. And that was me. That was me for a long time. And I gotta tell you, that is not a healthy place to be, especially in relationships. So I already gave it away, was very codependent. I was shaping and molding what I thought whoever it was that I was dating, whoever my friend circles were even. I was just a facade or a mask of people depending on who I was with. And so one of the things that happened is that I went to therapy, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. Granted, I'm a therapist, right? So I'm going to say that. So I get it, right? And this is not going to be a whole it actually probably is a whole infomercial on therapy today, but it is a really great thing to do, because in all honesty, I would not have been able to get to a place where I was healthy or whole enough to be in a good relationship had I not done that. Now, granted, I might be in a different place than some of you are starting from, because I had a lot of abuse and trauma in my family of origin and my life growing up before entering into therapy. So I truly honestly needed it. But one of the things that I will say is that even though I'm a recovering codependent, as you can tell from my long list of things that I'm doing, I am still a little bit codependent because I still really like to help people. I still really like the affirmation of people feeling like I'm doing good work. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but a bit of an overachiever, right? And that's just part of my codependency still. So I'm still recovering from it. It's not fully gone, but I got to a way healthier place. I knew who I was before I started seriously dating someone. And I'm going to have that person come and talk. Introduce himself.
Yeah, so like Amy, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Minneapolis, and after college, I spent a year. I was not a Christian, but I spent a year volunteering for Habitat for Humanity at their headquarters in Georgia, which is a Christian organization that builds houses for low-income families, and really enjoyed my time there. And that was one of the experiences I had as a younger person that kind of planted a seed for me that there was something about Christian community that really attracted me, but I didn't really have faith to go with it because I wasn't brought up in a religious family. And after that 1 year of volunteering, I went to grad school for 2 years and then came out to the Bay Area. And once I started my job, I sort of, all my life had kind of been planned out to that point. It's like, all right, go to school, study, then start a job. And so I came out and I didn't really know many people out here. And I was like, all right, is this it? It's just, I remember many weekends that, the first year or so that I was out here, just not knowing anyone, not having anything to do, feeling really lonely, and started really struggling a lot with feeling really anxious and kind of depressed. And so I started going to see a therapist, and one of the things that she asked me at one point, is like, what are some times in your life where things were a little bit easier? And I thought back to that time that I had spent working for Habitat for Humanity as one of the happiest times that I had, and part of, a lot of it was the community, and a lot of it was doing something in my life that was helping people. And so she said, have you ever thought about maybe, trying to attend a church here? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea. So I started attending church in Menlo Park, and that was where Amy had been going for a while. I took a class, an alpha class. I don't know if people have heard of that. It's like a class sort of for people who are kind of seeking and interested in checking out Christianity. And through that process, and through the process of making some friends and really getting some good community there, I decided to become a Christian. I decided, like, hey, I think this teaching about Jesus is really true. so then I was, I built up some community, and I was really in a much better place in my life than I had been just, where I sort of felt like I had gotten to the end point of this plan for my life and wasn't sure what was going to be next. And so I started going to a singles group that they had there. And Amy and I met. I don't know if you're going to share about that first time that we met and how. Yeah, okay.
So we met, at the time I was on staff, and I was organizing for the singles group, and I was organizing regular trips up to a homeless shelter in San Francisco called City Team. And so literally I met Antony at City Team, organized through the church, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, who's this cute guy, right? Like, I gotta get to know this guy. But then, so I offered to drive him back to his car, because it's hard to find parking in San Francisco. I offered to drive him back to his car, and I did, but in that few short minutes, I found out he wasn't a Christian. So I was like, brr, 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 and I was like, oh, that's a bummer. So it totally turned the light off as far as no interest. I had no interest, because one of the things that was super, super important to me, again, two passions in life, right? One is my theology, my faith. And so I knew I wanted somebody that had the same faith as me. And that was a deal breaker. So it just shut him off as an option. Now, as he mentioned, he became a Christian through this Alpha course, which happened after that. And so he was taking this Alpha course. He became a Christian. It was amazing. And then it was funny, because fast forward a couple of years, we would serve together with Habitat and all sorts of different things at church and everything. And I remember telling all my friends, oh my gosh, you guys should date Antony, because he's going to be the greatest father. He's going to be the best husband. You should date him. And then all of a sudden this light went back on in my brain, being like, why am I selling all my friends on him? I should date him, right? And so, but it was such a flash, it was literally like a light switch on and off, because I had no interest. But then the reasons why I was selling people on him was because of his godly character at the time. But that, again, it was a lot of, several years at least in between. I don't remember how many do you remember? A couple at least. I don't know, a few.
Yeah.
At least a few.
Yeah, probably 2 years.
At least two solid, before we even started dating, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but I share this a little bit because two things. You can go to the next slide. Two things. Antony and I got married 21 years ago this week. Our anniversary is on Thursday. So 21 years ago, fist bump for that, yay. And what I tell everybody is that the secrets of our marriage, a healthy marriage, we have had not much conflict in those years. I know conflict is normal, and conflict actually can create intimacy, right? I know people hate when I say that, but you have to do conflict well for it to create intimacy. But the secret, I honestly, truly believe that the secret to a healthy, great marriage of 21 plus, I don't know, hopefully it's going to be 60 years, who knows, that'll make us old. But the secret is two things: our faith, shared faith, and then having both gone through therapy. Because that helps us be able to deal with communication. It helps us to not only know ourselves well enough, and how we can communicate. No, I don't like that. I want that. No, I don't like it. What our goals, what our hopes, what our emotional experiences of that was, right? I'm not okay when you say that because that hurts my feelings, or whatever it is, right? The fact that we both did therapy before we started dating has helped considerably. All right. So what I want to do, though, is spend the rest of our time not talking about us. That's just a lot about us. Sorry, you get to know us a little bit. But now I really want to focus on what helps, or what really keeps people stuck from being able to be in healthy relationships. As I mentioned, this is going to be much more lopsided towards the mental health aspect of my profession. Because, it's not. So psychology was started as a study of the spirit, right? Which they're not separated. Psychology, theology, it's the same thing, right? It's a study of how God created us, of how he wired us, essentially. So I don't separate them out, but just in case you do, I'm gonna really focus on what makes a person healthy enough to be in a healthy relationship. And if you're not healthy enough, then you're probably stuck. Right? And so that's the gist of what we're going to talk about. And the things that hold people back from, you can go to the next slide, the things that hold people back and are stuck is these things: unhealed wounds and past traumas, insecurities, a lack of self-awareness, fear, and expectations. I'm going to unpack each of these so you don't have to remember this. I'm going to go one by one through them all. So if you can go to the next slide. Unhealed wounds and past trauma. I told you that was my biggest issue. I've had most of these issues. So, like I said, it took a lot of work. But the unhealed wounds and trauma, who we are, our experiences before this day have helped to shape who you are and what you believe to be true about people. Right? If you had gone through abuse as I had in childhood, you will probably not trust people. It will probably be hard for you to trust people, right? So, and past betrayals, like that boyfriend who cheated on me, right? Like that's gonna impact whether I can trust a relationship or whether I'm gonna be suspicious or, jealous or whatever it is, right? So our past experiences shape who we are and what our actions are and what our behaviors are even today. So there's unhealthy dysfunctional dynamics that can happen. And typically, especially if we have unresolved pain or trauma, those things will drive us into relationships. Our brains subconsciously want to resolve it, right? So what happens is a couple different things. It wants to experience the same kinds of pain and trauma. So you gravitate towards the same kind of person as the last person who was just a horrible person today, right? And you keep finding yourself in these cyclical patterns because you haven't resolved past traumas or past issues, right? And so that's one of the things that happens. The other thing is that sometimes you go into the self-sabotage moment where what happens instead is that you don't trust people, so you want to avoid getting close to them. So emotionally, probably subconsciously if you've not done therapy, but emotionally you kind of hold people at a distance, right? Or will do something or say something that will throw a wrench into the relationship, cause conflict, cause it to blow up, right? Somehow so that you can avoid that emotional distance, that proximity, right? So you distance yourself in that relationship. But these things are patterns that are because of unresolved trauma or issues in your life. And the last thing that I want to touch on here is that there's often this belief that opposites attract, right? But that is a sure sign. If you're attracted to somebody that's opposite of you, that is a sure sign you are stuck in a trauma situation, an unresolved trauma situation. Because if you're attracted to somebody very different than you, that is not going to work out. You've got to find somebody very closely in temperament, in energy levels, in whatever it is, value systems, right? You've got to find somebody very similar-ish to you, right, than different. Because the opposite attract mentality is you trying to fix yourself or heal yourself or balance yourself out, but that is all, again, trauma responses. All right, go to the next slide. All right, so let's go and touch on insecurities. I told you I was these already too, right? That codependency, trying to change yourself, morphing into who you think that person wants you to be, caring what other people think about you instead of just feeling like, hey, I'm a solid person, this is who I am, that confidence, right? It's a very different way of being. So then often there's that codependency where you're trying to do that people pleasing, or this is similar, they're both based on this self-centered approach to things, but one is also I put on this face and pretend to be more dynamic, more charismatic, more perfect than who I actually am, because we're all broken individuals. If you can present as a very authentic person, then you're confident. But if you present to everybody that, hey, I'm way better than what you'll get to know me, I'm putting on this whole facade, right? I'm pretending to be great, right? That, and then you're afraid that when they really get to know you, they're probably not gonna like you. That is actually masking your insecurities. That's actually narcissism, right? You're pretending to be somebody that you're not. And that's certainly not a healthy place to be. And as you said, or heard from my example, like you literally, if you have low self-worth, insecurities, low self-esteem, you might land yourself, not necessarily physically, it could be verbally abusive, just somebody who doesn't cherish you or value you in the same way that you should be cherished or valued, right? So that's another thing that can keep you from getting into healthy relationships. And as cliche as this is going to sound coming from a therapist, this often, all these insecurities and all this trauma and abandonment and all these different things often are from attachment issues in childhood. And so if you can go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about attachment. How many of you are familiar with attachment styles? Oh, I love seeing that. Like half the room, that's amazing, at least half. Great. So this is not going to be new. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. For those of you who don't know all that much about it, there is a book recommendation in the back at the end that you will have that it would be a great book to read. But attachment styles, basically, there's a few different ways, four different ways essentially that you can operate in the world, and a lot of that is based on your trust issues or attachment issues of your primary caregivers. So essentially, anxious is that if you are worried about being abandoned, if you have a fear of rejection, you might be very suspicious in relationships, jealous in relationships, right? Like that insecurity, you want a lot more affirmation. You might even assume that your partner thinks poor things of you or whatever it is, right? That is an anxious attachment style. Typically it comes from not being secure and feeling like you have the validation and love from a caregiver in childhood. Avoidant personality attachment styles is essentially that you like to hold distance. You're a little bit more aloof. You don't really want to connect emotionally. You're kind of seen as like a little bit maybe not available emotionally. And you kind of distance yourself. You don't really like to talk about feelings. You don't really want to even feel those feelings. And that's more of that avoidant type of personality. Typically this stems from feelings of rejection or neglect from childhood. And you generally have learned that your needs aren't even, or your emotions aren't even important enough for your caregivers to focus on, so then you don't end up focusing on them, and you don't feel like it's a good way to get attachment or nurturing. And so you just end up keeping everybody at a distance. Then there's one called anxious avoidant. This can be a vacillator. This can be called, I don't know, they're called different things, disorganized. They're called different things. But essentially it's a combination of the anxious and avoidant tendencies, where when you are sensing the person's pulling away, you get really anxious and want to rope them back in somehow. But as soon as they're starting to feel close, like, whoa, that's a little too close, so now I've got to do something to distance them a little bit more again, right? And that's that vacillator, right? And it goes back and forth. And that dynamic generally comes from your caregivers not really feeling, not being consistent in the care. And so as a kid, you never really knew exactly what you're going to get. Am I going to get the nurturing, or am I going to get neglect? Are my parents going to be there? Are they not? Right? And keep going back and forth. And that's the anxious avoidance style. And then secure, last but not least, we all want to be secure. There's a very small percentage of the population that actually are, though. So just a heads up, you're probably not. But it's okay to strive for that and to want to be that. But the secure attachment, it can be learned, discovered, healed, corrected, right, to become secure. But that's in order to be able to have healthy, balanced relationships where you yourself are an autonomous, independent person, and like, again, knowing who you are, and then being able to present that to somebody else and have interdependence, not codependence, not needing, interdependence, being able to partner, come alongside, and recognize the other person as the whole person, not needing anything as far as them fix you, to support you, to heal you. No, just partnering alongside of each other, and that is the healthy relationship dynamic. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of wondering, I feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like every person probably has a little bit of all four of these things.
It's very true, and that's why I'm saying everybody's probably one of these things. Secure attachment is a lot less consistent in people. Typically, it's one of these, unless, again, you've done a lot of therapy or healing or the introspection. I think a lot of that can just come from a lot of time with God independently, right? But generally, you've got to do a lot more introspection to get to that secure place. But yeah, typically people do have that. If you're saying that, you're probably anxious avoidant, like a combination.
I have no doubt about
No. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But because some people will certainly be one or the other. I am 100% more of an avoidant type person because of the abuse and neglect that I went through. So that's me personally, right? But everybody's going to have one more dominant aspect of this. Right, and so, but if you're feeling like, oh, I'm kind of all that, you're probably the anxious avoidant one, right? But and I know we're going to do questions at the end, so I don't know if you, is it okay for me to take them during?
I mean, however you're comfortable.
Okay, I'm fine doing them as well. So if people have questions along the way, I'm happy to take them as well, because I know I'm supposed to save time for Q&A at the end. So we'll do that too. All right, so that's attachment styles. I think one of the things that was key for me in the attachment was through the process of, again, my therapeutic journey, it doesn't have to be that way, I started discovering who I was as a child of God, right? And who that child of God, who God created me to be. And I think one of the things that really happened for me was that I started having that belief that I was worthy of love, right? I started getting in touch with being lovable because of my relationship with God, first and foremost. And when that started healing, I started realizing, oh, wow, like I can actually be with other people as an authentic person and not this people pleaser or not this false self, right? That I can actually be liked by people too. And that was a huge healing journey. I can't say moment because that was a year or two at least in the making. But and that's one reason why I love the greatest commandment and the second greatest commandment, right? Because it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And this is Matthew 22, 37 through 39. Because I love, it says, love others as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Because it's implied you have to love yourself first, right? And that's the part for me I had not gotten to, right? So I needed to get to that part. I needed to accept God's love to be able to feel lovable, to feel love even for myself. And I think that, again, you can go to the next slide too, because I'm going to talk about the lack of self-awareness. Because for me, I was not able to recognize things about myself. I would have emotional experiences. I remember lashing out at customer service people, like on the phone. I mean, just yelling at them, having no emotional control over my emotions or like the triggers that I would have. And I was just repeating this toxicity in so many ways, especially in my early 20s, that I had no idea what this stemmed from. That was all, again, a result of like a few different things, that unresolved trauma that I hadn't yet worked through, my feeling of insecurities, but as soon as I felt like I was powerless, that's when I would get into a rage mode. Like I would just get to this point where I would just yell at people because that powerless little kid that hadn't healed yet was just saying, this is not okay, right? And so that was again my journey in this. But one of the things is that I had to learn my emotions, first of all. I had to learn my emotions and then had to learn how to deal with them appropriately, right? In order to be able to handle them effectively and then be able to have emotions alongside of somebody else, right? And have them deal with it effectively too, or like handle mine effectively. Otherwise you get into these toxic patterns in relationships where it's fighting, right, in relationships. And that's, like, if you're fighting, yelling at each other, that is not okay, guys. Like, you should not fight in relationships, right? You can have conflict, but it should not be a fight, right? And that, I think, is something that you've got to learn. And the way that you learn that is to have the self-awareness and emotional regulation. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, I can't remember if this is a slide, it's not, I don't think. The next thing I'm going to talk about is self-regulation, emotional regulation. We call it EQ sometimes, right? Emotional intelligence. And that, maybe this is a slide. No, it's not. Okay, we'll go back. So that is really the key, because what happens in emotional maturity, we mature in all sorts of different ways. Physically is the most common one that we think of. But we mature spiritually, we mature cognitively, we mature emotionally as well. And so what emotional maturity looks like is understanding when something happens and it triggers an emotion inside of you. Like somebody could say something, you see something, somebody does something, you think a thought, something triggers an emotion. And emotional immaturity looks like responding, impulsively responding in that emotion, right? Emotional maturity is, okay, this thing made me mad. I also understand what my emotions are supposed to communicate to me, right? Like fear says, ooh, I'm scared, this is unsafe, right? Anger says, this is not okay, right? Grief says, I'm sad, I'm lost, I want something to be different, right? Happiness says, hey, I want more of this, right? Our emotions are essentially communicating things to us. And so whatever is being communicated to us by that emotion, we have to understand that in the moment it's triggered, and then decide what we're going to do with it, right? But this is all in the split second that happens, right? And so when a person's emotionally mature, they have a handle on their emotion. So somebody could say something that would typically have pissed them off, right? But then they're like, hey, I understand that's my emotional anger. They're telling me to be quiet. I don't like being silenced. That silence, being told to shut up or be quiet, is a trigger from the shame and silence of my childhood, not being able to speak up about the abuse. And so I understand that I am right about to rage at them, but rage in this situation is not okay. So I'm gonna bite my tongue and I'm going to say, you know what, like, I understand that you're not happy about this, or I understand what you're saying, but let me take a few minutes and I can get back to you, right? Or whatever it is. And that's me having emotional maturity, if I can have that emotional regulation, right? That's emotional regulation. If you can get to that point, not a lot of people do in life, but if you get to that point, you're gonna have healthy relationships. But you've got to do that work to mine out what triggers those emotions in you and what your emotions are trying to tell you and how to catch it in time before they explode or before you say something you're going to regret or do something that you're going to regret, right? And so that, again, is the emotional regulation. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about, so speaking of emotions, we're going to talk about fear, right? Because when you think about what keeps you from relationships, fear is often a big thing. Right? Fear, rejection, right? Fear of being consumed or losing yourself completely. Fear having to open up and be vulnerable and like share those intimate parts of who you are and the past and the skeletons in the closet and all these things, right? Like fear of not getting what you want. Maybe you're afraid that perfect person's not out there for you. Not being able to find a soulmate. Fear not being good enough, right? Fear what others, maybe even family members or friends, are going to think of that person. Fear of the differences, maybe cultural differences or spiritual or racial differences, whatever it is. Like fear that maybe the differences are too different or whatever it might be. Fear of commitment is another thing. Like, man, forever is a long time. And I'm like 18, right? Like that's something you should be afraid of at 18 for sure. But anyways, the fear, all the different things that you can fear, the best way to deal with fear is to work through it, to work through the fear. So whatever it is that you're afraid might happen in dating somebody or in opening up yourself to somebody different that you wouldn't normally have pursued or considered, then what are you afraid of? Then pursue that. Like, in your head, not actually in pursuit yet, right? But in your head, say, okay, if I did take a risk on this person, or if I did do this, what's the worst thing that can happen? There's two questions in therapy. Whenever somebody's afraid of something, there's two questions that I will continually ask, and it's this rabbit trail that we go down. The first thing is, what if you do that, or what if that thing happens? And then, what's the worst that can happen? Right, and just keep going down that path of, okay, so if that happens, then this will happen, right? So what if I date somebody that my parents don't like? Well, then my parents will disown me. So then what then? What happens, right? Well, then I won't have them in my life. Well, they won't be a support. They won't help me raise my kids. They won't, and you just go down this whole big path, and then, well, I'm gonna have to rely on a community or babysitters or whatever to help me, and I won't have those relationships, and they won't get to know their grandkids. Is that the worst thing that can happen? And if that's the worst thing that can happen, can you survive it? It might not be the best thing, right? Because we're not going down the best case scenario, we're going down the worst case scenario. But if you can survive the worst case scenario, then it's fine. Go with it. Go down that path for a little while. See if it'll work out, right? All right, that's fear. Another hindrance, I don't even know when we started. I know we're getting to the end though, so that's good, right? Hang in there. Another hindrance is expectations. All right, so expectations. You might have unspoken, unconscious, unrealistic expectations you might not even be aware of, right? And these things definitely sabotage prospective relationships. If you are looking for more, I always tell people, if you are looking for a 10, then you had better be a 10, right? Because a 3 is not going to land a 10. Right? I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. So you've got to look for what you're going to get, right? You've got to be what you want, essentially, right? It's got to be similar. And so you've got to have realistic expectations. You also have to understand that if you're looking for somebody perfect, it's not going to happen. You're going to be looking forever because nobody's perfect. We're all works in progress. Mm-hmm. Right, and so I also tell people, and as you saw from that attachment issue thing, I tell people everybody's got issues, Everybody, and statistically, because I work in mental health, I can tell you 30% of the world has anxious anxiety issues, right? 28% have depression. About 35% have some sort of substance disorder. Like, if you add these things up, that's like over 100%. 100% of people in the population have something, right? And that's just some mental health issues, right? And so there's something, everybody's got something. So you've got to look for somebody, does your thing go with mine, right? Do your issues match mine, right? Are they complementary? Or are they going to cause conflict, right? But you can't look for somebody that doesn't have issues. It's just not going to happen. All right, and then looking for somebody to complete you, I've already talked about that a little bit. Don't do that. Just be a whole person on yourself as yourself, right? Be confident in who you are. Don't try to find somebody to balance you out. Like, if you're an introvert, find another introvert. It's gonna make your life much more easy than trying to be balanced out by an extrovert. You're gonna be drained and exhausted almost every day of your life, you know? And so it might just not be worth it. Find somebody that matches you. Don't try to find somebody to complement you or now, there are perfectly healthy relationships of opposite sides. So I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying try to look for somebody similar to you. That's going to be a way better way to go. All right, I think one of the last things I want to say about this, well, no, there's a couple things. Feeling versus choice. People always want the Hollywood romance. Right? They always want to fall madly in love, and so truly madly deeply, if you know that song. But they want to fall in love. They want to feel a passionate love. That is Hollywood. That is not healthy in relationships. And let me tell you that, because if it's an instant attraction, it is that completion, opposites attract thing happening. It is a subconscious healing of traumas that is trying to work itself out. Do not fall for instant attraction. Do not fall for passionate desire, right? That is not healthy or sustainable. It will disappear. It will not be good in the long run. What you want is more of a friendship, right? You don't have to be friends forever, or years, right? But more of a friendship, more of a compatibility, more of an alignment of, oh, hey, you're easy to talk to. I like spending time with you. It doesn't have to be instant attraction. Now, it's nice to find the person attractive. Like I said, when I first met Antony, I was like, oh, who's this cute guy, right? Like, but that's not the end all be all, right? It's not the key part. The key part is companionship, not passion or the feelings. Feelings disappear over time. You'll never get all your needs met. I hope I've already been clear about that. You need to meet your own needs. Like, Antony does not travel like I do. He's not been to all these continents. He's not coming to Antarctica with me. I do those things on my own or with a friend or, my kids, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, he's more of a homebody. Totally fine. He wants to do woodworking in the garage, do it. Have fun. I'm gonna be traveling the world. If you wanna come with me. If you don't, that's fine. But that, I don't expect him to do everything with me. You shouldn't expect your partner to do everything with you. The other thing about expectations is that if you are looking to fulfill your family's or your parents' expectations, or even your friends' expectations, especially I will say your parents, think of how old you are. Think of how old your parents are. The value system is probably way outdated, right? Like, we talk about these generational differences. My parents are boomers. They have a very different dating experience than what I had even. And I'm a Gen Xer. Am I Gen X? I'm Gen X, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a Gen Xer, right? And so I had a totally different experience than what my kids in Gen Z are gonna have, right? And so whatever your generation is, you can't expect your parents to know your life, your experiences, your preferences, cultural differences, even in the age difference. It's going to be so different, right? So don't try to please them. I mean, it would be nice if your parents liked the person, but don't try to please them. Don't try to find somebody that your parents are like. That's a little outdated, right? And probably set you and or them up for disappointments. One thing that I will say about expectations, I say this to people all the time. If you have an expectation, right, an expectation for that person to be perfect, an expectation that my parents will love them, right, and then what really happens doesn't measure up, everything in between is grief, loss, disappointment, frustration, anger, right? This whole gap in between is. right? Now there's only 3 things that can happen when you have expectations. 1, you can ask them to meet your expectations, right? Please accept my partner for who they are, right? Like, please, you know, I don't know what the other example I gave was, but anyways, please meet my expectation, right? But that's one choice. The second choice is they can compromise. You can say, I'm going to lower my expectation. I want you to raise your expectation, and we'll compromise somewhere closer to the middle. And then the third choice is you are going to lower your expectations, right, to meet the other person's. But what happens is that there's only one of those scenarios that you actually have complete control over, right? And that's you lowering your expectations. And so you've got to say, okay, my parents aren't going to accept this person or not love them as much as I wanted them to, and I'm going to be okay with that, right? Because that's the only one that you have absolute control over. The other ones require other people to do something, and you can't make other people do something. All right, so those are all the hindrances, most of them. I want to share now, again, that was very heavy. That's a lot of stuff, a lot of baggage, a lot of emotional trauma. You might be re-traumatized, trauma dumping and everything in here. Hope not, but we have therapy that we can offer. I know a good therapist. All right, so I think in therapy, I view myself, and I hope every good therapist is this, regardless of whether they're a Christian or not. I view myself as a conduit for God's healing, right? Like that Jesus is the ultimate healer. And so I literally just feel like a vessel in those rooms where whatever's happening, I get just to be the conduit, the hands and feet, the mouth, you know, whatever it is of the Holy Spirit at that moment. So, so I really do think that therapy is a holy, sacred ground, and God's grace abounds there, and so I think that that's a real healing experience for everybody. So I already told you this was not supposed to be an infomercial for therapy. That's my last plug. But the other things, can you go to the next slide? The other things that I want to make sure that you know, is this the one? Was there not a slide before this? Oh, go to the next one after this one. Okay, yeah, we'll go here first. Yeah, okay. So the therapy is an option. There's also something called bibliotherapy, which is just reading self-help books or like books about important topics that can help you learn and discover things. And I have a list of them at the end I'll put on. But then the last thing, and this is the one key component, no matter what path you go down, the key component is that you have to surrender, especially as a Christian, as a believer, a Christ follower, we have to surrender our will, our expectations, our hopes, our values, our goals, our fears. Like we have to surrender all of this to God, right? And I love the Proverbs verse, right? So I'll read it again. We read it at the beginning. But trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Can you go back to the surrender one? There's a few things that I want you to know about surrender, right? How do you do this tangibly? Right? I think surrendering is hard. So I want to walk you through that, and then this is the last thing, and then the books will come up. So how do you surrender? I would say, instead of trying to navigate relationships and complexities based on what I want, right, we're looking to, okay, God, what is the best for me? Right? Like, look at, I always love the book, I'm forgetting the author right now, marriage. What if God made marriage to make us holy, not whole, is the subtitle. And I love that because it's really about our character shaping. And I think that that's what we should be focused on, is how God is shaping, refining our character, right? Both as individuals and then later in relationships, or even while we're dating. And so that is one of the things that I think is a key component. God, what do you want for me, right? And instead of seeking what I want somebody beautiful. I want somebody, you know, I remember writing, I had a list. Have any of you ever wrote down a list of character qualities that you want in a future partner? Okay, great, I'm glad I'm not alone. Because I had a list of things. Antony is not all the things that was on that list. I hate to tell you that. I don't know if you even knew that. But one of the things was that I wanted somebody who would go from like tuxedo wearing, this man wore tuxedo twice? 3 times? weddings.
Yeah, weddings.
Only weddings. Never wears a tuxedo, right? And so, but he would go from tuxedos when we'd go to like the Broadway shows or the opera, right? And then he would like go to the beach, and he hates the beach and like all this. Anyway, so he's not all the things that would be on my list or would have been on my list. But that was my list. That was my plan for my life, right? That was not what God had planned for me. And so I had to be open to, okay, there were these things that I thought would be ideal, but are those deal breakers? No, there was really only one that was a deal breaker. Does he believe in Jesus? That was my only deal breaker. And so there might have been other things. That was the biggest one. That was really the only one that I think was the deal breaker. I would say, what else does this look like? Stop trying to be a perfectionist. If you feel like you're performing and not authentic when you're meeting people, stop. Just be authentic. Stop people pleasing. Stop trying to be anything but who you are. Just be. Like, this is one of the things I work with clients all the time. Instead of being a human doing, be a human being. Just be. Right? Simply be still. Know that God is God. I would say a wonderful prayer. I wrote out this prayer, so I'm going to actually pray it. God, I don't have the answers, but I trust that you do. Help me to trust your timing. Help me to accept your love, to know that I'm lovable and ready to receive love from others. Help me not to chase the things that I want, but to look at what you are doing in my life. What ways you're shaping my character, how I see evidence of the fruit of the Spirit growing in me. Let me seek you first and foremost all the days of my life. Have your way within me, and may my life reflect who you truly created me to be. Amen.
Amen.
And then there's a few other prayers that I wrote up, prayers of surrender. I love St. Ignatius of Loyola, the prayer of abandonment. It says, take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my entire will. All that I am, all that I possess, you have given me. I surrender it all to you, to be disposed of according to your will. Give me only your love and your grace. With these I will be rich enough and will desire nothing more. And then even shorter, the Surrender Novena. This is a Catholic prayer, but it says, oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. And I think that that's something that I can just pray daily and continue to pray daily. One last thing I would say is that in order to be in a healthy relationship, you have to be emotionally healthy, and that is not something separate from your spiritual life. It is your spiritual life. All right, now we get to take questions. Fair enough.
I have a comment and a question, actually.
Great.
On the surrender one, I think it's actually awesome. I really liked your prayer. Made me think about something you said a little earlier, facing our fears. One of the aspects of singleness, I guess, or looking for a mate, is that fear of being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And being lonely, alone, and all that stuff. Right? And I found it that once that fear is faced and overcome, you automatically surrender, because we don't have to put in a heck of a lot of effort to go dig in here and there. You can just kind of go and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So the two of them, I thought, go together.
Absolutely.
Is having to face that fear of maybe I'll never find someone.
Absolutely.
Which is
Yeah. What if?
fine.
What if you never do?
You never do. We can
What's
live
the
our
worst thing
lives.
that can happen?
Yeah, we just live our lives as if that is the way it is, and then I think things change
Yep.
along the way.
Absolutely.
And then the other question I have, the question is, maybe jumping ahead, I don't know, but you were talking about the avoidant, and then on the communication and not fighting. And I was just trying to think, how do you make, that's not even the word, right, because we can't make people, but how do you entice or encourage or motivate an avoidant person to sit still enough to hear you communicate what it is that is bothering you, because they get up and leave?
Yeah. Well, I would say avoidant person, if they're in their unhealth, they would do that, right? But if they were a healthy person with avoidant tendencies, because we always will have those tendencies based on our attachment styles, right? So I have an avoidant tendency, right? But I'm in a healthy place now, right? But my tendency is like, really sounds funny because I wouldn't want to sit around and talk about emotions all day, but that's what I do for a job, so that's why it's a little bit funny. But typically, an avoidant person wouldn't want to do that,
No,
right?
they
But if they're operating from a place of health, they will, because here's why. Avoidant people, if they're unhealthy, they avoid emotions. But a person who is healthy, again, has to be aware of their emotions and address them, acknowledge them and address them, know what they're experiencing. Because if you're not in touch with your emotions, if you're not able to express your emotions, you are unhealthy, right? And so if you are dating somebody or in a relationship with somebody who is avoidant and won't talk about those things, they're not in a healthy space.
But if they do talk about it, how are they still avoidant?
They're not. They have avoidant tendencies then, right? So they would have had to shift more to the secure place to be able to address it. But again, that's one of the things that comes with work and time, that introspection, that healing, bibliotherapy, therapy, right, is to be able to understand your emotions and to talk about them.
So at the bottom, then, essentially, the person has to make a choice that that there's something wrong that I need to fix it.
Absolutely.
That's all. That's the premise.
Yes.
You go with that.
If you want a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of people in relationships with avoidant people who it's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
But
And
that's
they
not what
refuse
you
it,
want.
Yeah.
Right.
They refuse to accept it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they just avoid all the time, and then you'll just feel like you're in a partnership with somebody who's very emotionally distant. And you'll just never feel that sense of security from them because they're not capable of doing it because they're not healthy enough. Right? And it's not that they would do anything, but because of their avoidance, you will experience that, even if you are a secure person.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons for avoidant is they are just selfish. They just don't want to take.
I wouldn't
things
use the word selfish.
I mean, it's one of the reasons.
Well, I wouldn't use the word selfish. Here's what I will say. I will say it's a self-protection. Right? It is protecting. All of them, all of those behaviors are protecting.
What about, for example, you have to take some responsibility, but they don't want to, so they look like avoidant, but actually they are just selfish. They don't want to take the responsibility. Not necessary.
So again, I'm a therapist. So
Yeah.
in all honesty, I will always look for the ways that a person. So even narcissism, like even that egotistical, awful type of bravado, everything that is just brokenness in disguise. Right? They are a very insecure person that is projecting an air of confidence, not taking any responsibility, not apologizing for anything. This is like the extreme version of what you're talking about, but that is just brokenness.
Oh.
Right?
Oh.
They are a broken person that does not have self-esteem, and they are acting as though they do
Oh.
to make themselves feel strong.
Oh.
Right? And so they are needing healing. And this is their protection mechanism. They're trying to feel like a whole person. They're trying to feel good enough. And that's what they do. Right? Because that's what they think is going to make them feel powerful and smart and successful. Right? But it's actually because of brokenness. Right? And so I don't really think of them as selfish. Right? I mean, it is a self-oriented thing, but it's a protection mechanism. Right? And so they need healing. They need healing.
Can I add one thing on?
Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing on the avoidance. I think that, I think for me certainly, and I think maybe guys that I've talked to, friends of mine and stuff, we didn't necessarily grow up with a lot of vocabulary about talking about feelings. Like it's funny, like I'll get together with my guy friends, and then for a weekend or whatever, I come home and Amy like, how's it going? Did you guys, tell me about their relationships and their feelings? And I'm like, I don't know, like we talked about we talked about the stock market and like some sci-fi movies and like we talked about like how bridges are made or like whatever, like maybe at some point we talked a little bit about our relationships or our kids or whatever, but I think just on average a lot of guys did not are not as equipped with the tools to either perceive their own emotions in the first place or have a vocabulary to talk about them. So certainly I think that there can be like there can be a kind of avoidance that is like a pathology that maybe would require some therapy to get fixed, but there's also maybe like on average, obviously there's a lot of variation from individual to individual, but I think a lot of guys like may not be as equipped to communicate about their emotions or even understand them or sense them and be able to name them themselves.
Or one might say they're not as emotionally mature
Yeah.
as some women.
Yeah.
But you know, that depends on the guy too.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. My brother, he cannot express all his emotions to everybody, like especially to me and my parents, anybody. But to his wife, somehow he expresses it, and sometimes she will come and ask, "You did that in his childhood, and he was hurt." I was like, "When did that happen?" I was like, I think it depends on the person, how the other person is receiving also. So what is your suggestion if a person is avoidant? Is it okay to approach that person and talk? And when we have to like go back, if it is too much hurtful for us, or how will we know how far we can reach to that person?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, in any time that you have a conversation, there's a give and take, right? And so when you're talking about things, typically what I do in friendships, not in therapy, but in friendships, what I do is I will put something out there for myself, right? Like, gosh, I had a hard day yesterday or something, right? Like I could just talk about something a little bit less surfacey than, hey, you know, hey, I watched that new Marvel movie. I love Marvel movies, right? Hey, I watched that movie and like it was so fun, right? I'm gonna take it one step deeper in a friendship and just say, hey, I had a hard day yesterday. It was really a challenge. Like I had this situation at work that was really draining, right? And I'm gonna see what they do with it. Right? If they can empathize, if they can understand, like, and say, gosh, like, what happened? Tell me more. Like, they can talk about feelings, then I know we can go deeper, right? And it's like stairs. Just take another step down if you want, right? And at some point, they're going to come to a landing. You're going to come to a landing that you're not okay going any deeper because you're just not that close of friends yet, you know, or, you know, with a sibling, like, I literally had a client tell me, like, there's just some things I don't want to know about my brother, so I just don't want to go there, right? And so I was like, okay, great, like that's your landing, right? And that's as deep as your relationship will go. But when you're thinking about a life partner, there shouldn't be a surface like something not very far down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You want to be able to go to some amount of depths with somebody that you're going to spend a lifetime with.
Yeah. I mean, when you are saying about the levels of depth, I remembered another book. It's written by Matthew Kelly. It's called 7 Levels of Intimacy. He actually speaks about the levels.
Yep.
That's a good book,
it's a good
actually.
book.
Yeah.
I mean, I could write 100 books up
Yes.
here.
But how much? Like, I know that we are not supposed to share everything with everybody. Like,
No,
but
trauma dump. I already
yeah.
did a little bit of that today. Sorry, sorry guys.
So how will we know when to stop? With the
Are they matching? Right. First of all, you should not be monopolizing conversation. I totally did today, but this is the platform, right? But you should not be monopolizing the conversation. There should be a back and forth. And then what happens is that you share a little bit or they share a little bit, and are they matching? Like we call it mirroring in psychology. Are they going to the same level? Are they opening up as much as you do? Right? And then take it just a step down, right? Like you're not gonna say, oh gosh, like I wanna know if this person's baggage meets mine, so I'm gonna just say, hey, I struggled with alcoholism for 30 years, like can you deal with that? Or hey, right out the gate, like I want kids, and if you don't want kids, this is a deal breaker. Like you might not open up about all your hopes, dreams, and like on the first few minutes, right? You've got to see like, okay, like what do you do for a living? Like you're gonna take it step by step, gradually down, and are they matching you the whole way? Are they able to understand, empathize, get you? You understand them. You're taking, each of you are taking a step deeper at times. Right? And then eventually you will be able to share about those skeletons in the closet. It's probably not going to be on date number 3 even, right? But eventually you will be able to.
Yeah, and When we are talking about Tri-Valley Counseling Center, you said there is like pre-marital counseling and pre-engagement counseling. So what is the difference between those two, and which one is better? Like, is there any
What was the first one you said?
pre-engagement counseling and pre-marital
Oh,
counseling?
premarital. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking that, because this is the thing that I love to tell people before you ever get into a serious relationship. Please, 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 please get pre-engagement counseling, not premarital counseling. And there's a couple of reasons. One, if you think this is the person for you, great, explore it. What pre-engagement or premarital counseling does, and they're essentially the same, but what they do is they talk about the hot topics, the main sources of conflict in a marriage, and make sure that you guys have already addressed it, you already are aware about your communication styles, you're already aware of those potential conflicts, and you have tools of how to deal with it. Right? And I say pre-engagement is way better, because once you're already making plans to get married, there is momentum and expectations about a whole bunch of people who are going to make it feel like you have to go down that path. But what comes up in pre-engagement or premarital counseling might be like, whoa, maybe this is not the healthiest relationship for us. Right? And so instead of having to get to that point of being like, oh, now we're going to call off a wedding, which most people don't, and then a month or 3 or 6 or 2 years later, they might be heading for divorce, right? It would be way better up front to get pre-engagement counseling.
Thank you.
Oh, and yes, we offer that. We offer all of that, any of it, and all sorts of counseling, individual counseling, couples counseling, families, kids, all that stuff at the Tri-Valley Counseling Center. And I can go grab some cards after this in case anybody wants one.
I had a question about how do we square being dependent on God, which we're called to do, and the direction to become one flesh with our spouse, with the idea of being secure or independent. I think I might be unclear exactly on those terms.
Sure.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if it was related, because you mentioned codependency versus interdependency.
Yes. So here's what I would say. Codependency, you become that person. Like when we got married, you remember about the unity candle? Do you remember? Okay. When we got married, you know how people will have a unity candle at their weddings, where each couple takes one of the candles that represents themselves, and then they light one middle candle to represent their union? Most people will take those two individual candles and blow them out. And that would be what happens with codependency. You become the same person. You become, I'm not going to go travel the world without my husband. I have to do everything. A codependent relationship, me needs him. I'm not operating alone in the world. He might go to his work, I might go to my work, but I'm planning all my evenings around time with him and doing things with him and everything that I'm doing. If I go to this relationship, it's us, right? It's like an unhealthy merging of those two people. Right? And that might feel like unity in marriage, but that's not. That is unhealthy, because somebody lost themselves, or both people lost themselves. So the healthiest thing, and this is what I required us to do in our marriage, was that when we lit the unity candle, we still had our two candles there. Like, we are still individuals in this marriage. We come together as one. We are committed to each other. Who we are as a couple and as a family is one huge component of our lives, but our faith will operate separately, right? And I love that verse. I had it on the first slide. The cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. That was read at our wedding too, because you've got to think of it as that each strand, if you think of a cord that's made with 3 wires, right? Each strand represents me, Antony, and Jesus, right? And that is, or the Holy Spirit, or however you want to view that. That is healthy. We are all our own independent person, but codependently working and alongside of each other and together, working in this way in life.
So still operating as a unit, but
absolutely
individual components.
Absolutely. I did not lose who I was. He did not lose who he was.
Yeah, I would say that the way that I think about it a little bit is that we both have like our individual faith and connection with God and dependence on Jesus, and that still is a primary thing for us, even though we are in a partnership inside our marriage, and we have a family that is our marriage and our kids. We seek to work together. We are constantly trying to become a better spouse to each other, but we are complete people in our relationship with Jesus individually.
Ultimately, something's going to happen to one of us, and we're not going to be here. One of us not going to be here anymore,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to have either of us so broken. Like when this happens with my parents are very codependent, right? And I hope, are we recording right now? Okay, can you pause it for a second?
It's just patterned on, our relationship with God and Christ.
Yeah.
Christ is the groom.
It should be forever,
And we're
yeah.
the bride. And so, at least the way I understand scripture, that, we pattern ourselves off Christ in that way. And so there is a high degree of dependence in that relationship. And as we grow, sanctification, we grow closer and closer to Christ, the more and more we'll end up mirroring him.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that when you, when Antony and when we are Christ followers, Christ is here, right? We are both we're going to get closer as we're going through our life together, because our character is being refined by the Holy Spirit the whole time, right? So we are just going to continue to get more reliant on, that cord is getting more and more wrapped, right? Closer as we go.
Okay, it gets tighter and tighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Oh, sorry, did you have a question over?
Yeah, could you elaborate on the independence? Because I do understand the codependency, but I'm imagining that as a couple that you rub off on each other.
Yeah.
And there are some things you learn from him. There are some things, he learns from you. So when you say you have independent faiths, does it mean you don't have studied the Bible together? You don't pray together?
I would say I want to be careful about any legalistic. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have
Not
to do
that you
that.
have. Not that you have to.
Okay. Because I am not that kind of pastor. I know some of you might even go to churches that are, and I'm not going to say anything bad about that, but I personally am not you have to read your Bible every day. You have to do that. That is a great way that we learn about God. This is a great, amazing gift that we have, right? But for us, we don't have that legalistic kind of a marriage, right? We both have our own faith.
We're legally married.
we do pray. We do I do that. The way my prayer life has developed over time is I really do just constantly have a conversation going with God. I don't take time to. We do as a family and everything. We take time to pray together, but that's more to help my kids understand how to have that relationship with God, right? And I trust that he has his own men's group and stuff. We are doing things independently and together, and as also teaching things for our kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so even though you do have your own faith journeys, there is still an agreement that you have to have faith in Jesus Christ. One
Absolutely.
person can decide that, today I'm Buddhist and that's my own faith.
Yeah. That happens in relationships for sure. That happened with, is this recording?